Hi, Chasing Fi here with 5 of my biggest financial mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes in my younger years, and while I am on the path to financial independence now, I don't want others to struggle and waste time on things that just create more debt. So here are 5 of my biggest financial mistakes. One huge mistake was going to graduate school. I have some regret about going to college for undergraduate studies, but because my business is directly tied to the fact that I had instructors as an undergrad who really encouraged me to become a writer, and they helped shape my writing and make it better, I'm thankful I took most of those classes. The education courses I took to become a teacher were a joke, but the English classes were good. But graduate school? That's a totally different story. Not only did it set me back in my writing and on my writing journey, it also cost a lot of money. It was a total waste, and I might add, if I could go back and do things over, I would definitely skip graduate school. So, graduate school should be a place where you make connections in your field that carry you into a career in your specialty. I will admit, I didn't plan as well as I should have because back then, when I went to graduate school, I was under the impression that the more education you had, the better income you could expect throughout your life. And at that time, it was somewhat true. But if I could go back, I would pack a bag and leave Michigan before the ink was dry on my undergraduate degree. With zero job prospects due to a very slow economy, it was not smart to stay in Michigan after I finished undergraduate studies. All of my family and friends were there, and I didn't have the courage to head out on my own. So I went to graduate school because it had been my experience that that would make me more marketable. Besides, the economy couldn't stay down forever, right? Actually, by the time I graduated graduate school, not only did the economy not get better, it had gotten much worse. And by 2009, Michigan was 49th out of 50 states when it came to economic opportunities. So if I had left when I graduated in 2001 from college, I would have definitely had better job opportunities just about anywhere else. So by the time I finished graduate school in 2004, I didn't even want my diploma. I'd grown disenchanted with the program, and I thought that the program would improve my writing, but it didn't. It actually just fed me a bunch of crap about how stories had to be highly complex and difficult to understand for them to be good literature. I left graduate school with no desire to read or write, and it would take years for me to get my writing mojo back after wasting time in graduate school. Another mistake I made was staying in a state with limited opportunities. Michigan is a beautiful state and I love it. And if there had been better opportunities, I might still live there. I tried to make a life in a place where it was clear nothing was going to come my way. There were times when applying for jobs was something I did every single day. I'd roll out of bed, I'd get on the computer, and I'd start submitting my resume for jobs. I lived in teeny studio apartments, my car for a short while, and I worked 3 part-time jobs in a quest to stay close to my loved ones. Because my life was not going well, I didn't see much of my family because I was constantly working some dead-end job, depressed or short on funds. In 2010, I bought a one-way train ticket to Salt Lake City, Utah, and that was by far the best decision I've ever made. There were tons of jobs in Utah, and even though some didn't pay as much as comparable jobs would have in Michigan, the fact that I didn't have to be tied down to one job because of a lack of opportunities indicated that Salt Lake City was a good place for me to stay for a while. If I could go back in time, I would leave Michigan, like I said before, as soon as I finished college, and I would choose the next place that I lived based on the economy, not on how many people I knew that lived in the state. Since I've moved to Utah, life overall, everything is better. Everything has improved because my opportunities improved and I don't feel bad and I'm not struggling financially. So I wish that I'd left Michigan sooner. So if you are in a state where there aren't a lot of opportunities, don't be afraid to branch out. If you go to a decent place, it can really work out so much better than anything's going to work out in your home state if it's having trouble. Another mistake was not putting FIRE principles into practice sooner. I remember reading Mr. Mustache's blog years ago. I loved the idea of not being dependent on a salary from a job, but I wasn't making much money back then. Generally, I was making about $20,000, anywhere from $25,000 to $20,000 when I first started hearing about Mr. Mustache's blog. I didn't immediately put the FIRE principles into practice because I didn't think that I could. So I've known about FIRE for over a decade, and I didn't put most of those principles into practice until February 2021. So I wish that I'd done that earlier. Discussing the FIRE movement produces strong emotions. Some people think it's terrible for people to want to retire early, while others think that it's a gimmick that can't be achieved. I often hear quibbles about whether or not the FIRE movement is truly about retiring, because a lot of members of the FIRE movement continue to have courses, websites, YouTube channels, all that good stuff. And a good chunk of my associates think that financial independence and retiring early are both silly concepts. I've heard things like, your inbox will always be full. You'll always have debt. You can't live without debt. And my favorite, you only live once. To that last quip, I say, exactly. And since I only live once, I don't want to spend 50 years tethered to a job. So yeah, the FIRE movement is right up my alley, and I shouldn't have poo-pooed my ability to reach financial independence in the past. Now I am positive that financial independence is in sight, and I wish I'd had that kind of confidence in the past. This next mistake, it might sound a little strange to have it on the list, but this was truly a major factor in the amount of money I spent. Self-medicating. During and after college, I worked at a restaurant. Going out after work was a regular activity, and I ate, drank, and made merry. Or did I? Actually, I was going out because my job sucked, money was tight, and I couldn't find a date, and I felt terrible about myself. So I self-medicated with alcohol, friends with benefits, and food. When I look back, life was not happy. I was miserable, and the people I hung out with were mostly miserable too. It was a vicious cycle fed by the fact that nothing was changing in my life, and I wasn't changing anything. This was all tied to my finances at the time. I was working a low-paying job, but then I was spending too much money, and then I was upset that I didn't have enough money. So it was just this vicious cycle. After leaving Michigan, the bouts of depression ended. I haven't been depressed in over a decade, and I credit that with the fact that my life, every single aspect of it, is better. And part of that is because when I moved to Utah, I said, hey, you know what? There's no more of that going out. There's going to work, there's investing, and there's saving money. And once I started doing that, I felt so much better. I didn't have so much anxiety. So now at this point in my life, I don't have any of that going on. I'm not self-medicating. So it's so much easier to just say, hey, I'm just not going to spend that money. I'm going to invest it. We still treat ourselves, my husband and I, if we want a pizza or something, we get it. We want a beer, we get it. But it's not like something that we do every day because we don't need to self-medicate. So that huge difference for me. Another mistake was giving in to consumer culture. Consumer culture is hard to avoid because we're constantly seeing something that we simply must have. Looking back, I can see how I fell victim to this. I'm not a flashy person, but I will indulge in certain things. For example, I used to treat myself to a trip to the bookstore, and I would buy, with a trip to the bookstore at least, and I would buy several hardcover books. Then, during hockey season, I would take each Saturday off, order pizza, and watch hockey on a cable package I purchased. And as I mentioned before, I'd worked in restaurants the entire time until, 5-6 years ago. So I never really had a lot of money, but I was always able to scrape up the funds to pay several $100s for the hockey package. And I also was able to scrape up funds to buy a pizza every single week. And there was alcohol along with that too. I had to have beer as well. So just think about that. So hockey season starts in October. And if you watch it all the way up to the Stanley Cup Finals, which usually I'd fall off before that because my team never makes it that far in the playoffs, but we're talking like relatively, like June. So October to June, I'm ordering like pizzas just about every weekend. I've got beer every weekend, and I've got this package. So think about how much money that is. So I got rid of cable about 12 years ago, and I started limiting my dining out to casual or fine dining. And I don't do that more than once every few months. I still love hockey, but I no longer buy the hockey package and watch games on my computer. Instead, I use that time to work on my business. I check the scores when the games are over, and I check the highlights. NHL players have made it. They've made their dream come true, and I'm thankful for their entertainment. But I'm not spending hundreds of dollars just so I can watch the games. If there's one on in my area, great. But I don't have cable, so I have to watch everything on my computer, and I never get a full game. But you know what? I found out that it just doesn't matter that much. What matters is that in 4.5 years, I don't have to worry about a job anymore. So that's more important to me than all of these things on this list. And these are things that I wish that I'd realized earlier. I think that recognizing where you can make change immediately is huge. So think about areas that are costing you money and how you can stop that from happening now, because your financial mistakes can be your biggest lessons. These have definitely been 5 of my biggest lessons, and I hope that it encourages you to evaluate where you are financially as well. Thanks. Have a great one. Bye.